Welcome to the Divorce Podcast, where we explore all aspects of ending relationships, separation, and parenting apart. If your marriage or partnership has ended, or you have friends and family who are separating, this podcast is for you. I'm Kate Daly, a relationship counsellor, divorce specialist, and co-founder of Amicable, the online legal service for separating couples. In each episode, we look at relationships and separation from different angles, including the emotional, legal, and social. I'm joined by experts and special guests who share their own unique stories, experience, and tips with the goal of helping people end relationships in a kinder and better way. In this episode, I'm joined by Amicable's divorce specialists, Syder and Bec Jones, to share tips on coping with not being with your children. Perhaps your child is with their other parent just now, and you may be listening to this on Christmas Day or another special occasion. This episode looks at tips and advice to help you get through. We begin by describing common arrangements for children and focus on typical holiday arrangements and the effects they might have on you as a parent if you don't get to spend this time with your kids. We explore how arrangements might affect children's feelings too, and what steps you can take to ensure that everyone has a great Christmas Day without feeling guilty or worried. We also share tips on how to approach talking about Christmas or other holiday arrangements with your co-parent and planning things in advance. We finish off by sharing some tips for self-care if you're spending this Christmas without your children. If you loved this episode, then please subscribe and rate us on your preferred listening platform. Welcome to you both.
Thanks, Kate.
It's lovely to have you both, and really nice to have the whole Amicable team, it feels like, on the podcast today. And we're going to be talking about the difficult emotions when you're not with your child. And this episode is probably going to go out on Christmas Day. So we're particularly kind of thinking about people who maybe aren't spending Christmas with their kids. Maybe they're with the other parent or with grandparents. And we're going to really focus today on the sort of emotions and some tips and tricks for how you deal with not being with your kids all of the time. And I guess we know, don't we, from our experience, guys, that this is perhaps the biggest thing when you divorce or separate and you've got kids that you have to get your head round, this whole idea of not spending every single day with them. So it's hard. It's hard. You know, we've been there, haven't we? We know how difficult it is. But let's start then, if we can, by giving a little bit of context to all this. Anthony, how do people get to a scenario where they've even set up parenting arrangements? Can you sort of briefly give us a bit of a summary about how separated parents can make their arrangements together?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's always really difficult coming up with the initial plan because there's so many things that you've got to try and organize, try and sort through what things are staying the same. So things like the activities that kids do and those bits and pieces, but also what changes are happening. So often when parents are moving into separate homes, there are changes to their work arrangements. Sometimes people have to work more, and that can be its own challenge in terms of making those arrangements. So the first thing I always say to people is not to expect that you're going to get it 100% right on the first time. It's about coming up with a initial plan, one that feels like it will work well, but also being really open to reviewing that plan, checking in with each other, seeing how it's working in reality when you start to roll it out for the children as well as for yourselves. So often people start that by sort of sitting down and coming up with a plan together, or if that's quite tricky, you can get co-parenting support. So there's services that we offer at Amicable that can help people come up with those initial plans as well. But it's just coming up with a framework that you can then build on, really, and trying to make it as flexible as possible, but at the same time making sure it's pinned down enough so that everyone knows generally what's happening on a week-by-week basis.
That's really interesting you say that, because I'd be exactly the same. I'd want to get everything all organised and every little detail done. But you're right, sometimes you've just got to start and let it evolve and see what happens and test. You've got to sort of just try and see, work out what works, what doesn't work. Something that sounds really good on paper or that all the books shout about might be an absolute sort of disaster for your particular family, I guess, mightn't it?
Well, yeah, because it's not just yours and your ex-partner's plans. It's also if you've got 2 or 3 kids, you're already talking about making something work for 5 people. Often people, when they separate, need to get additional support from grandparents or another friend from school doing some school pickup. So all of a sudden you've got 5, 6, 7 people that you're trying to make this plan fit for. So I think expecting to get it 100% right on the first attempt is, not normally something that people can achieve. There are normally teething issues and things that you have to adjust.
Yeah. And I guess, Beck, that's one of the key sort of characteristics that you need to try and cultivate in yourself, isn't it? That willingness to accept things aren't going to be perfect and that things will go wrong and that it's nobody's fault and you don't have to blame. But those tough emotions you can have as a parent when it's very tempting when things are difficult, particularly in the early stages, to sort of infer meaning where sometimes it's just an accident that something's gone wrong or it's just happened. Talk to us a little bit about the emotions that parents go through.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Kate. When you separate from someone, those emotions are always heightened. So when you're making arrangements for your children, you seem to really take them a lot bigger and harder than you would maybe in the real world. So I think it's about trying to understand both people's emotions and understanding that actually things can go a little bit wrong and you can talk about it and come up with a solution to fix it together, because it doesn't mean someone's done anything hugely wrong. It might just be that a pickup went wrong or that timings didn't work. So I think being understanding to your co-parent and putting yourself in those shoes without portioning blame and saying, why did that happen? Just use it as a learning curve, really, to think, right, this has happened. Let's talk about it and make sure we set up some boundaries or we do it in a different way so it doesn't happen again. So I think that's the tough part of emotions with your co-parent. But I think the other emotions, Kate, you're also talking about is that real horrible feeling of not being with your children, because we all have that. And I think that never goes away. I think in the same way people talk about, grief, like that never goes away. You just learn to live with it. I feel like it's quite a similar thing. Those really tough emotions of, I don't want to not see my child. They don't go away, but you have to come up with your own strategies of actually being able to cope with that. And I guess talking about not being with your kids on Christmas Day, if that's happening to people like on this day to day, that is a really, really hard emotional day for people. That special day, that Christmas, you've built up your life with your children. It's Father Christmas. We've got these, things that we do every day. We wake up and we do this on Christmas Day. To take that away is quite hard. So I think you've really got to understand that and actually acknowledge that that is probably going to be a difficult day for everybody, and just understand kind of that that's okay to feel upset, sad, angry. That's all right to feel like that. It's just about being able to manage those emotions yourself as the co-parent, because ultimately we just want our kids to have a great day on all their special days and all their Christmas days and all their time with each other as parents.
It's a really good distinction you draw there, Beck, between, as you say, acknowledging it and accepting that it's happening and that is how you're feeling, versus how you then carry yourself into the day and how you manage that emotion and not let it sort of seep out or spoil the day for the children, because they're two really distinct things, aren't they? And I think it's really important that we all share and acknowledge we're not trying to gloss over this. We're not trying to make it happy clappy and, as long as you're doing the right thing for your kids, you'll all feel all right. You won't. You might feel really, really quite awful on the days or the lead up, and Christmas might become something that you don't really look forward to as well. I think we have to accept that for some people that is how it feels when you're separated. But just acknowledging it and accepting that they are your valid feelings, and then knowing that you are, sufficiently in emotional control enough to be able to carry out that day and make it a good day for the kids involved. That's super important, isn't it? Just being able to distinguish between what you feel and how you behave. Massive.
100%. And I think that if you can do that, actually you'll go on to have maybe a great time on that Christmas Day, actually, because I feel that's what can happen. You acknowledge it, you deal with it, you make sure you behave in the right way for your children, but actually you will also have a great time and do something different. You might end up spending an adult Christmas and just having, a really fun time doing that. You might volunteer somewhere in a food kitchen or do something like that to give back. There's lots of different things that you can build in for yourself when you're not with your kids. And then I think respect each other's Christmas traditions when you are seeing your children on Christmas Day. So acknowledging it is the first step to actually making it better, I think, for you as a co-parent as well.
We'll come on to the children emotions because obviously they're really key to all of this. But just before we do, I think on that point of as an adult, what do you do when you're not seeing your children? We do sometimes list off, don't we, things that people can think about. Giving back is a really good example. I always feel that if you're on your own at Christmas, you feel that sense of not wanting to impose on people and not wanting to invite yourself places or do things because it just feels a little bit awkward. It's like the weekends, really, isn't it? When you're a single parent sometimes and you're on your own because it's not your weekend or whatever. The weekends can feel a really isolating time because you haven't got normal routine, and it's the same on these special days or at Christmas, whatever the special day is. It's that same feeling of people seem to have their own plans, their own family things going on, and you feel like a spare part. What do you do? Do you just have to bite the bullet and just ask anyway? Or what are the tricks as adults that we can use to kind of make that day something good and special for us? Anthony?
Yeah, I think it's not unusual for people to feel like that, absolutely. But I also think that most people have someone in their life that they know does spend Christmas alone, and you always invite them around. There's always a seat at the table. And so it's hard to think about it in reverse, but there will be people in your life that would be more than happy to have you there, that would be more than happy to make you part of their day as well. And like Bec was saying, there are new traditions, different things that you can do as well. I know that once my mum got used to, the Christmas changes that we had growing up, the Christmas evenings that she didn't have me at home was always a good excuse to have a couple extra eggnogs because she didn't have to sober drive for anyone. And so it's trying to think about, yes, it's not ideal. It wouldn't be the number one choice that you would have, but you can make the most of it in your own way as well and catch up with people that maybe you wouldn't have the opportunity to do in other years.
I also think as well, to add to that, Anthony, you could always, quite often it's a chance to meet new people and new friends. And there are lots of people that are newly separated or that maybe separated a couple of years ago. And sometimes just being a bit brave and thinking, I might just reach out to that person because they might feel equally, I don't know what to do. And you can make some really good new connections with somebody that's going through something similar to you, which I think is also a good thing. As well as your old friends, you've got a whole wealth of different people you can possibly connect with.
I like that idea of finding new people in the same situation. There's lots of different apps and kind of websites now, aren't there, where you can be very specific about what the sort of things you want to do and the interests that you have. So it's really interesting, the idea of creating a new sort of friendship group around the holidays when you don't have your kids. And like you say, if they're in the same boat and understand, how you're feeling about not having your kids, then they're not going to put their foot in it perhaps in the same way that other people might or what have you, and make it worse. We talked a little bit about emotions in adults. Let's talk a little bit about children experiencing tricky emotions. Anthony, what can Christmas bring up for kids, or special days where it's out of routine and they might be doing, different things that are a bit more organized and they have to be a bit more scheduled potentially?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just like everyone else, change is difficult, and change is difficult for children too. So if there's a routine that they're used to, adjusting to that can sometimes have its own difficulties. But again, it's trying to encourage them and make them understand that sometimes these new changes can be good things. For a lot of children who have separated parents like myself, the whole fact that we get 2 Christmas days sometimes is great. Whether one of those is on Christmas Day and the other one's on Boxing Day, actually, a lot of the things that adults worry about, children don't worry about. So they don't care what day of the week it is. If they've got 2 Christmas days in a row, excellent. Sometimes there are things, though, that do have their challenges. Like I can always remember when I was growing up, my dad remarried, and I've got sort of step siblings and half siblings. So I didn't worry so much about him when I wasn't there because I knew that he had family around. But I did worry about my mum, who didn't. So actually helping to reassure children that, this is what I'm going to be doing when you're not here. I'm going to have a great time. I'm going to be, doing X, Y, and Z, helps to put children at ease that they don't have to be worrying about the parent that they're not with as well. So I think it's just about talking to them about it, explaining, what those changes are going to be, but wherever possible, putting a positive spin on that too.
It's a really good point, because I can remember when mine were really little and they would go and stay with their dad. My older one would always say to me, "But what are you going to do?" And I used to say, because I had the children most of the time and he lived a long way away. So I was just like, "I hardly get any time off, darlings. I'm going to be absolutely fine." I'd list out all the things. I used to think, God, am I hamming this up a bit too much here? But I would genuinely look forward to, that couple of few hours where you'd get actually a bit of time off. And it would be just such a relief. But I always used to make a point of saying to mine, I've got lots of lovely things to do, and I don't get to see my friends very much because of all the work and all the stuff that we do together. So I always used to really kind of try and impress upon them that it was important for me to have some fun and some downtime too. So that's nice to hear. Glad I was doing something right.
And I think that applies to not just Christmas Day, but other special days throughout the year, and days where those sort of normal or the traditions that you've followed previously might change. But also thinking about it from the child's perspective, because going back to Christmas Day and using that as an example, I understand that a lot of parents feel it's quite important to both have time with the children on Christmas Day, but try and think about what that looks like for them. What will their day look like? So for me growing up, we always did a sort of lunchtime handover on Christmas Day. But with the family I was with in the morning, sometimes I would feel like, oh, things are just getting going and now I'm leaving. What am I missing out on? And similarly, for the family that I was going to, they've already had the morning together. So I sort of feel like I'm coming in midway through that. And so just trying to be conscious of, is this something that will be the best Christmas Day or Easter or whatever it might be for the child? Or actually, is this just because us as adults and what we think those days should look like? It can be challenging, and going back to the emotional side of things, that can be difficult sometimes from an emotional perspective, but it's looking at it from those different points of view.
So it's really interesting what Anthony says, isn't it, Bec, that, you've got what his experience was and you've got kids who are like being dropped in and out of scenarios. But how do you cope with that then? What do you do in your family?
So I'm divorced as well, and I've been divorced for 10 years, and I'm now in a blended family of 5. So I've had quite a number of years to sort of do the co-parenting at Christmas. And when I first got divorced, it just worked out that the children were with me for most Christmases. It was not something I decided upon. It just worked for us and the kids at that point. So I very luckily had a number of years with my children every Christmas. And then 2 years ago was the first year that they spent Christmas with their dad. So it was my first year of not having any kids at Christmas. And I found it very jarring, like you said, Kate. Even though I've been co-parenting and not seeing my children every other weekend for 8 years, it was still my first experience. And I realized just how hard that was. But actually, it turned out that I had quite a good day. I had quite an adult day. I went round to dinners, drinks and brunch and gosh knows what else for everyone's house at Kingston. So I managed to see a number of friends actually down the road and round and about. So I had a really good time, surprised myself actually. And then, in 2 years this time, I'm going to have my second non-kid Christmas. So I'm actually looking forward to it this time. But yeah, I think one thing my kids did say to me, Kate, recently was that they're having their second Christmas with their dad, and he's going to come up with some new traditions, Christmas traditions, because he's got a little boy and a little girl now who are 1 and 3, so super excited for Father Christmas. So my kids are experiencing all that again. And he's actually spoken to them and said, what sort of things have you done at Mum's or at our family in Liverpool? And they've sort of talked about that. And he's, I think, trying to sort of weave in a little bit of the things that maybe they're used to with their new traditions. And I thought that was a really nice way to sort of do their new family Christmas traditions, thinking about what my kids have done previously. So, yeah.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because whether it's Christmas or it's other religious holidays or family special occasions, whatever your sort of things, the days are, we get very kind of focused, don't we, on what we've always done and sticking to what we've always done. And it's really lovely to hear that there's actually an opportunity here. Like whenever a separation or a divorce occurs, I always see it as there is an opportunity to recreate and to have a new beginning of some description or another. And these traditions, as you said, are the perfect opportunity. And what's lovely about your example, I think, is it's involved the kids. Because I know, Anthony, you feel really passionately about the voice of the child and child inclusive decisions. So it's very nice to hear that Christmas doesn't have to be something that's talked about behind closed doors and organised just by the adults, but that actually you can weave in what children want and what the bits that they like, and that don't necessarily have to occur in one house, but could occur in both or whatever it is. And they can feel really part of making it special for themselves, can't they? And it gives them a sense of empowerment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the best things about what you were saying just then, Bec, is that your children can talk to you really openly about what they're going to be doing at their dad's and that they're going to be having a great time. And they're not doing that worrying about what you're going to be doing. So they're free to be themselves, to have a great time, and they're encouraged to have a great time with both of their parents, whichever way around that goes. And that's really important as well, for them to not feel as though they have to downplay the good times that they're having because they're not wanting to upset the other parent.
Yeah, that's a really important point, Anthony. Thanks for bringing that up, because it is really tricky, isn't it? Because we all get told, don't we, don't quiz your kids about what's gone on in the other household and, let them just sort of be and all the rest of it. But if you can foster that open dialogue with them, so it just feels natural to chat about stuff and to get them to share what they want to share, rather than you feeling you've got to keep asking them and checking in with them and all the rest of it, then that's great, isn't it? It's not the big stuff that sometimes people worry about. It's all the small stuff that sort of flows in between. I always get really obsessed with presents. And I remember Bec and I had a conversation a couple of years ago about, we literally have spreadsheets of exactly how much you spent on somebody, and not just that, but when they're little, it's about the number of presents, because they haven't got a clue what anything costs, which is why you get such ridiculous Christmas lists. But, it's trying to balance everything up so everyone's stocking looks the same size and they've all got the same number of things to pull out of it. And it's all those little things that actually the kids focus on, isn't it? Not how many hours you're going to be here, there, or whatever. I mean, I think they do care a lot if, like you say, if they spend the whole day in the car traveling between you. That's just annoying, isn't there? And I guess there isn't a perfect solution. And I know we do talk in some of our sessions about splitting the day versus splitting the 2 days versus splitting the week versus splitting the occasion. And there are lots of different ways you can do it. And that's going to depend on things like how close you live to each other and what the atmosphere is going to be like and how many handovers is going to feel acceptable and the age of your kids. So there isn't a perfect way, is there? I get that. But do you think there are some kind of golden rules that people can follow, Bec, around what works and what doesn't work?
I think, like Anthony said before, you need to think about your children and how it's going to work, focus on them as like if you're far away, if one's going to be having family Christmas in Liverpool and you're down in London, it wouldn't be right to split a day or even 2 days. So I think you need to really focus on your kids and how it's going to be for them in reality. And I think another kind of thing that I'm just going to touch on that we haven't really mentioned before is how important it is for the person who's got the kids at Christmas to maybe get the kids to reach out to grandparents or the family, because that's a really important part for them, isn't it? To know that they can speak to not only their dad or their mum, but if they've usually had a chat with, their granny in Wales or something, they can still do that. So I think it's really important to follow that and just to speak to your co-parent to see what they are used to doing as well on that day.
Yeah, that's a good point, isn't it, Anthony? And when you are the parent who's looking after the children, who has the children on Christmas Day, it's making sure that the other parent's acknowledged in that day for them, isn't it? And that if they want to phone, or it's right to phone and what have you, that there's that sort of Passover and that contact still, isn't there? And that relationship built and sharing sort of special moments. We always used to do like videos of present opening and things, or we'd do like live opening of a present from dad and what have you, so that my kids could then they'd be online with their dad when they were opening their dad's presents and that kind of stuff. So there's lots of different ways with technology now you can include people who aren't physically there.
Absolutely. And that applies across the board as well. So even thinking about things like Father's Day and Mother's Day, or the birthdays of the parents. I mean, you might do it through gritted teeth, but taking your children to get a present for them, even if it's just something small, so that they know that they've got something to give mum when they see her on Mother's Day, or give something to dad when they see him for his birthday, even if it's just a card. So those little things that you may, for good reason, not feel like you want to do anymore, but thinking about it from your kids' perspective and making sure that they're still able to continue with those things. So yeah, Christmas Day, obviously a big one, but thinking about those other occasions too.
Well, supporting the other parent's relationship with your child is one of the biggest things you can do, isn't it, in terms of co-parenting? And it's one of the most damaging things when it isn't there. But actually acknowledging that they have another parent that they care about very much, and like you say, doing the cards, whether it's birthday or Mother's Day or whichever other festivals people celebrate, that's the important thing, isn't it? Showing your children that you acknowledge and appreciate they have two parents, and that the other parent is very important to their lives. That's part of showing love for your child.
Yeah, absolutely. Because regardless of what the day-to-day care arrangements are, whether it's a 50% split or a 60-40% split, you're both 100% parents 100% of the time. And it is about those relationships don't change when the children are with you or when they're with the other parent. And so it's just retaining that consistency for them is crucial, and something that when they become adults, they will look back on and be able to reflect on how that was managed and how the two of you did your best to make that work. I know it's certainly something that, as an adult, I've spent a lot of time, thinking about how that worked for me.
I think you're right as well, Anthony, because as another thing that I've noticed is, obviously you two are the most important thing to your kids as mum and dad until maybe they're hitting late teenage years when you're not anymore. But up until that point, you're 100%, the oracle in their lives, and being respectful and positive about your other co-parent to your children, even if you don't feel it, is really, really important, because they don't want to hear anything like that negative about their parent, definitely not from the other parent. So I think it's really important to stay as positive and respectful and have a little moan to your friend about things, privately.
Bit of a fake it till you make it moment.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of that, isn't there, in parenting generally, let's face it. Whether you're single parenting or otherwise. But yeah, no, I really like the way you put that, Anthony, that whatever the shared care arrangement is, however much of the care you do or don't have, 100% of a parent, 100% of the time, irrespective of time spent, that's a really nice way of looking at it, isn't it? Because you are, and you can be a parent in so many ways, irrespective of how much time you actually spend with your child. And it might be you can't spend time. There might be work commitments or distance things that prevent you from spending the time. It doesn't make you any less of a parent. And it's really important that both parents acknowledge that it's not about the number of minutes spent. It's about the quality of the relationship and the bond ultimately that you have.
And that you still have a big impact, both of you, no matter how much time. Because I think people worry about that, don't they? Well, if I'm not going to see my children, does that lessen my impact in terms of how I'm going to parent? It doesn't. You can still have it equally important.
And relationships ebb and flow, don't they? There are different stages in a child's life where one or other parent becomes more primary to them. And that's not just sort of the cliched things about young kids or anything, but you know yourselves as adults, how your relationship fluctuates with either parent, irrespective of who you're more similar to or closer to. There are different moments in your life when you need the skills and the love of each of the different parents at each of the different times. I think that's really important to hold on to as well, because I guess the other part about this is, you can have, this becomes a generational thing, doesn't it? So if you are the child of divorced parents, this Christmas or this festival thing is the gift that keeps on giving, isn't it? Because as an adult child, if you're then navigating, separated parents as an adult and you've got your own family, the layers of complexity become even deeper, don't they? Because you've got to try and you've got to understand what your own kids want, and then you've got granny and grandpa who might be separated, and it starts to become huge. So I guess the issue here is perhaps an issue we often come back to about trying to communicate in a respectful way, in an open way, and trying to get things organised and out there on the table as early as possible. I used to dread the end of the summer because it was literally like kind of Russian roulette. Who was going to bring up the Christmas word first and start to have those discussions of what it's going to look like. And when all the arrangements are going to be made. But yeah, it used to be a very abrupt end to the summer. But the earlier you can do it, I guess, the better ultimately.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that's a really important point is that, if Christmas didn't go well or a birthday didn't go well, maybe not bringing it up straight away, let it sink in a little bit, give yourself some time to think about it, but also making sure that you are discussing that with plenty of time to be able to go through options so that it doesn't feel last minute. People haven't got sort of leave booked or holidays booked. You've got time to revisit it. And sometimes I think a really good co-parenting relationship is one where they build in having a annual check-in of your parenting plans in general. Is this still working? What's changed? Because plans that you make for your child when they're 5 years old, probably not going to work when they're 15. So having a sort of annual check-in to see, is this still working the best way it can be for all of us? Are there things that maybe we need to reconsider? Then it's not coming as a shock. You're not waiting for who's going to bring it up first, because it's just a known thing that we will be having this conversation. It's always easier to come to an agreement and sort things out before they happen, rather than last minute trying to do it in the moment.
Yeah, I think, Kate, you said, being open and being able to communicate really helps people to make these arrangements, because you will continue to have to do it. In fact, I was chatting to a friend earlier this week who said, I'm just waiting for the sign off for like my summer holiday. I want to go, 2 weeks away, but you still do have to check in and make sure these things, and that will continue. You can't just last minute do things like maybe you would, which sometimes can feel hard. So I think just accepting that and knowing that if you can talk early, communicate early and make these plans, it's much easier for everybody.
I think you're right. I think it's one of the biggest changes, isn't it? There's a sort of spontaneity you can have as a parent set that are together, because you can just, you're there, you're talking all the time. But when you're separated, it doesn't require a lot more deliberate thinking about, a lot more forward planning. And it is right. It's stuff like you've got to get leave organised at work. I know we always have it, don't we? I mean, obviously, we should be good at this at Amicable because a lot of us are separated parents. But it's always trying to work out who needs what time, and accepting that sometimes people need to actually put it in really quite early on in the year, don't we? Sometimes we have to plan summer quite early on, and then we've got to think about, who's going to be around and who's not. So it can be tough because you've got to obviously negotiate that with your workplace and other colleagues and that kind of stuff as well. And it's sometimes as a separated parent, you do feel like you are juggling so many different people's interests, aren't you? Trying to keep it all in your head is just like...
Just a spreadsheet is needed. Or your partner may well have an ex-partner and they've got work. It can grow and grow, can't it, in terms of like these blended families, which are so common now. So yeah,
it's like when you're buying a house, isn't it? You're in a chain and you're all the way, you're trying to go back all the way down the chain. It's exactly the same as that, isn't it? Where, you're just trying to make it, you've all got to be in step together. And it is complicated. But, I think, like you say, being a blended family is standard now, isn't it? It's just so common that people are sort of getting better and more used to just understanding that arrangements aren't just a question of, whoever's your dominant person in your particular household hosting Christmas or whichever festival it is and getting on with it. There are a lot more people that need to be involved in decisions and discussions. Now, I just want to go back just briefly to this idea of what, if you're listening to this, you're on your own. It might be a child's birthday. It might be Christmas when this comes out. It might be another festival. It might be summer holidays. What can you do for yourself? What are the self-care tips to make the most of that time when you're not parenting your children?
I guess that, what makes you feel good, and thinking about what self-care, is it reading a good book? Is it going for a walk with a friend, or is it doing something social? I think try and think about what makes you feel good and have a plan. And if that's being by yourself and enjoying a bath and a book and a glass of wine, that's fine. But, to get plans in place and make sure you've got something so you are providing the right self-care to you, I think is a good point. And talking to friends, I think, is also really important. Getting some good help and advice. And if you can't get that from your friends, there's always therapeutic help you can seek as well to help your mental health and make sure you're feeling good too.
That mental health thing is a really important point, because now there's literally high street sort of stores for mental health. You literally can walk in off the street and book a 60-minute session there and then. And that's been a huge change. Therapy used to be quite a big deal to organise and everything else. It's not. And lots of people's workplaces have workplace counselling provision and that kind of stuff as well. So it's becoming much easier to access support. And certainly we can put sort of mental health support in the show notes as well. So if anybody is really struggling and feeling like they do need to speak to somebody, whether that's because they're feeling really down or whether it's just because they value having a third person who isn't known to them speak to them, then absolutely we've got those resources available to help.
I know some people who are separated when they don't have their children. They know that doing Christmas-based things might make themselves upset. So they just throw the traditions out the window, and it might be a good time to go somewhere warm. There's going to be go on a bit of a holiday. There'll be no one there. It might be cheaper. You don't have to do the Christmassy things. It could be a time where you do something completely different if that's what you think will be best for you.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's down to you, isn't it? I think I like the idea of just being spontaneous. So for me, my life feels so planned and organised within a centimetre of its life. I just think that if ever I don't have my kids, I just like the whole idea that I can just go anywhere, do anything, literally, and that gives me a thrill. Yeah, even if it's just going into London to some random place I haven't been to for ages, I just think I can just do this. I don't need to tell anybody where I'm going. I don't need to tell anyone where I'm going to be back. I don't need to organise a lift for anybody. I can just go. It's great. Small things.
And I think be kind to yourself as well, Kate, and don't sort of beat yourself up about feeling a certain way. I think it's okay to feel like that. And, if you do feel a bit down on Christmas Day, that's okay. You need to sometimes go through those feelings, and that's not a bad thing. You might do something great on Boxing Day, but just be kind to yourself and allow yourself to feel those feelings.
Yeah, I think it's a really well-rounded person who can sit with their own emotions and not be frightened of them, isn't there? And there's always a bit of gratitude journaling you can do as well, that kind of stuff. I like a bit of that. So remembering the things that you're grateful for. Excellent. Well, listen, it's been wonderful chatting to you both about this. It's such a big topic, isn't it, this time of year, making sure that people have got their arrangements in place. And I think one of you mentioned we do offer help and support. And if it's a different holiday, same goes, doesn't it? Whether it's birthdays, summer holidays, whatever it is, if you need help getting your arrangements in place to make them child sensitive and child focused, then definitely give us a call. Brilliant stuff. It's been lovely chatting. Thanks very much for joining me, guys. Don't forget, everybody, if you like the podcast, you can subscribe at thedivorcepodcast.com or from any of your favourite listening channels. Bec, Anthony, thank you very much for joining me, and thank you, everybody, for listening.